This is the quintessential Italian rice dish dating back hundreds of years. Aside from being the perfect accompaniment to ossobuco, it stands as a complete dish on its own. Like every other dish that has been around for any period of time, there are numerous variations. What I'm showing you here is my personal version, which is very close to the original true classic. You can follow this method, or you can make it without the modification to make it the centuries-old way if you prefer.
This is how it's going to be treated. We've got the marrow bone. We've got enough water to cover it, cold water. A good pinch of coarse salt. And a splash of cider vinegar. And now this is going to go in the oven. And after it comes out of the oven, let it cool down a little bit. We'll remove this off to the side. I'll get the marrow out of this bone, cut that out in a few minutes. The broth that this cooked in, this will become part of the broth that the risotto cooks in. It's going to be mixed with chicken stock. And in the tradition that this would be done in Italy, we've got chicken carcasses left over from roast chicken that has been steeped here in water to produce the chicken stock. I'm going to strain this off, and then I'm going to combine it with the meat broth here from the marrow bone. Pass this to a sieve. We'll add the stock from the marrow bone. Now I've got this stock. I'm moving it off to a back burner here. I'm going to bring it up to a simmer and reduce it down, concentrate it a little bit more before we actually begin making the risotto. And as this stock comes to a simmer, you're going to need to skim it a little bit and get rid of the scum off the top. As usual, you don't have to be fanatical about this, but don't leave it to have a layer of scum on the top because it'll be slightly bitter. Okay, I have the marrow. I have carnaroli rice, which I have weighed out to it. This is a time when the knife work will actually be important. You want to make sure that the pieces of onion are roughly the same size as the grains of rice. This is the standard, and then you don't brown it. So the onion really blends in with the rice when it's being cooked. When you're done, this is what you want to see. The pieces of onion are roughly the sizes of the pieces of rice. Now, the only other preparation need for this is to take 1 ounce of butter, cut it up into small cubes, and put this in the freezer. Okay, the stock has been reduced a little bit. Down here, we're going to begin cooking the risotto. The first step, in a cold pan, we're going to begin adding olive oil. This is a good quality UOP Italian olive oil. We're going to saute the onions very gently. We're just sweating them. We're not going to burn them. We're not going to get any color on them. This is very important. The onions should not be browned or turn golden. 3 or 4 minutes now, and you can hear some sizzling going on with the onions, but there's absolutely no coloration. That's what we want. Now I'm going to add a couple of cloves of garlic to this, but whole, because we're going to remove them later, so it'll make it easier to remove them. And we're also going to add that 260 grams of carnaroli rice. We're going to begin toasting this rice in the pan with the onion, and this is going to go on for maybe 3 minutes. Now here's where your nose is going to have to be the judge. You have to smell it. When it starts smelling nutty, that's when you're going to add the marrow to it. And we're going to continue cooking this just a little bit more here. Comes the white wine. We're going to cook it down until almost all of the liquid is evaporated. And keep adding stock to it as it cooks. But it doesn't need to be stirred constantly. That's an old wives' tale. It just needs to be stirred frequently. This is quite liquid, so we're going to let it cook for a little bit before we add any more stock, get it down to where it's all dry again. Meanwhile, a little prep bowl on the side here. We're going to take about, I don't know, a ladle and a half of the stock, and we're going to add our saffron to this. Now we've got the saffron blooming in the stock over here, and while the risotto continues to cook. Okay. Now, the stock's been added a couple times now. You can see how dry this is. Now I'm going to increase the heat. I'm going to continue this process, but now I'm turning the heat up. It was on about 5, now I'm turning it up to about 7.5 out of 10. And we're going to continue adding this a little, 1 or 2 ladles at a time to this. We're still keeping an eye on the time too. We were looking for that magic time of about 17 minutes to finish this up in. Right now it's at about 4.5 minutes. And here we are again, another couple minutes later. Same routine. I'm going to add another ladle of stock. Keep it going. Remember, it doesn't need constant stirring, it just needs frequent stirring. Also, as you're doing this, continue to watch the bottom, scrape the bottom. Make sure that you don't have pieces that are sticking and starting to burn. We're making risotto here, we're not making paella. So, watch. This is at about 12 minutes now. You can see it's starting to dry out again, so we add a little bit more stock. Just repeat the process all the way along. Okay, I just crossed the 14-minute mark, and now I've got plenty of liquid in here, but now what I'm going to actually start to watch for is time when the garlic cloves come up to the surface. There it is. I'm going to remove the garlic now. There's one more in there somewhere. I'll find it in a second here. And we'll get that out too. When it gets to 15 minutes, you're going to add the stock that had the saffron in it. Yeah, garlic cloves in here somewhere. We'll get it out in a second. Okay. And there's 15 minutes. So now I'm going to add the saffron. Stock with the saffron. I'm going to cook this for 1 more minute. And there's that other garlic clove. We'll get rid of that. Okay, it's on 16 minutes now. I'm adding the Parmesan cheese to this. I'm turning the heat back down now, back from 7.5 to 5. But really watch to make sure it does not stick to the bottom of the pan here. Make sure that that cheese gets all nicely melted in there. We're coming up on the 17-minute mark. This is the important stage here. Cheese is pretty well incorporated here. Okay. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more stock. Just a little bit more. Because I can feel it's just a little bit sticky on the bottom, and we don't want that. Here's our 17-minute mark. Now, here's those frozen butter cubes. This is the way that I learned to do it. I've heard people use butter that's not frozen. I've heard people not put any butter at all in it. This is the way I was taught to do it. It's the way I'm showing you to do it. You're going to whip this in to the point where you really, really work the risotto. You're going to make it smooth, and you're going to really beat that butter into it. Like you were beating a batter. When you're satisfied with it, put a lid on it. Kill the heat, move it off the heat, and let it rest. And then we have the proper consistency of the risotto. It's Spreads out nice and evenly. It's thick, but it's not stodgy.
Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.